Hi, this is Tamara from mooglyblog.com, and in this video I'm going to be demonstrating how to crochet the Rocky Road Wrap, which is a free pattern you'll find on mooglyblog.com. Please go to the link in the description or simply go to your favorite search engine and type in Moogly Rocky Road Wrap and the written pattern should pop right up. To make this pattern, I used a USL 8mm crochet hook and approximately 800 yards of Caron Simply Me, which is a number 5 bulky weight yarn. I did need 2 balls of the Bronzite, which is my darkest brown shown here, just to finish it off. We didn't use very much of the second ball, so you can save that for an additional project. I used 1 ball each of the lighter brown and the white, which are named Caramel Heather and Aran respectively. It's also always handy to have a couple of stitch markers. The finished size for this pattern, after you block it, is approximately 18.5 inches wide by 73.5 inches long, but it's easy to adjust and make longer or shorter to your own taste. Let's take a look at our finished Rocky Road Wrap. Here we have a closer look at the Rocky Road Wrap, and you can see I started from this end. We do the first few rows all in the same color, color A, and then we start switching out every row. You can see color A here begins us, then we've got B, C, A, B, C, A, B, C, A, B, C. So although the pattern itself, the stitch pattern itself changes every 2 rows, we change color every row to get this effect. Of course, if you'd prefer to make it in a different color pattern, a different striping pattern, or all in one color, you can do that as well and just ignore all the color change information. After we crochet all the way from one end to the other, and we want to carry those yarns along the side, we don't want to try and cut them and weave in all those ends, heavens no. Carry them right along the side. We work all the way to the other end here. And then finally we work, let me turn it over here this way. We work one round all the way around, a nice border to really finish it off and to hide all of those floats that we did along the edge. So it's really one continuous seamless piece with an easy to memorize stitch repeat that you'll be able to relax with over an evening or a weekend. So you can see here I've already put the slip knot on my hook. We begin row 1 with our first color here and a foundation double crochet row of 38. With foundation double crochet, we don't need to chain and work back into the chain. We make the chain and that first row of double crochet all at once. If you would prefer to avoid using the foundation double crochet, if you do not enjoy that stitch, then you can instead simply chain 40, double crochet in the 4th chain from the hook, and then each remaining chain across, and you'll have 38 double crochets. The main thing is to have 38 double crochets in your first row. So let's go ahead and start our foundation double crochet row. You can see here I've already made a chain of 2. I'm going to yarn over and insert my hook in that first chain we made. And I like to go into the underneath loop, but you can work into whatever is comfortable for you. Yarn over and pull up a loop. Now I've got 3 loops on my hook. We've got our active loop that we started with there. That's the yarn over. And this is the loop that I just pulled up through that chain. Now those first 2 chains we made are not going to count as a stitch for this pattern. We're going to ignore them like an unused turning chain. This loop that I just pulled up will be acting as the chain at the bottom of our first stitch. So right now we've got our hook in that chain. So we're going to yarn over and pull a loop up through that chain. And now we can finish our double crochet. We yarn over, pull through 2, and yarn over and pull through 2. So if you'd like, you can grab a stitch marker and put it right in the top of that first foundation double crochet. There we go. And then you'll know right where to stop when you come back across for the next row. Okay, so now that I've got my hook back in the loop here, we can continue across. That is how we make the first foundation double crochet. To continue across the rest of the row, we yarn over, go under the 2 loops at the bottom of the previous stitch. So whatever stitch we made before, whether in this case it's the first or the 100th, you can see we went right under those 2 loops at the bottom. We yarn over and pull up a loop. Now we've got 3 loops on our hook again, and this loop at the bottom will be the chain at the bottom of this stitch. So we yarn over and pull a loop up through that chain, and then we finish our double crochet. Yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over and pull through 2. Let's go ahead and make one more. Yarn over, go under the 2 loops at the bottom of the previous stitch. So the previous one, in this case the second one now, not the first one, just the one we just made. Yarn over and pull up a loop. Now that's our chain for this stitch, so we yarn over and pull a loop up through that chain, and then finish our double crochet. So that is how we continue across until we have a total of 38 stitches. And if you'd like to see that, again, I do have a separate tutorial for the foundation double crochet on my channel. Or as I say, you can avoid it by chaining and working back into the chain as long as you've got 38 double crochets at the end of row 1. So here I've got a small sample row 1 made. Yours should be longer with the full 38 stitches for the full width of the shawl, or if you're making a sample like me, any even number of stitches will work. Now we're ready to begin row 2, so I'm going to turn to work back the other direction, and I'm going to start with the chainless starting double crochet, abbreviated CSDC. Now this is my favorite double crochet substitute, or I should say double crochet turning chain substitute, but you don't have to use this. If you prefer, you can chain 3 and count that as your double crochet, which is the most standard beginner version, if you will. And if you have a different double crochet substitute you prefer, like a stacked single crochet, then you can use that instead. This is the one I like. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by pulling my loop up to the height of a double crochet. I can go by my previous row to kind of see what that looks like here, just eyeball it. Then I'm going to put my finger right on top of that loop so it cannot move around on the hook. You'll see it's stationary where it's attached to the hook right there. Now I'm able to yarn over with the loop itself, just like so. Then insert my hook right into that first stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop. Notice my finger has not moved on top of that loop. It is still holding it steady. Now we yarn over, pull through that loop and behind the yarn over, and now I can release the top of that loop, yarn over again, and finish our double crochet. Again, I do have a separate tutorial for this on the Moogly YouTube channel if you'd like to check that out, but it is my preferred double crochet turning chain substitute. I put a stitch marker in it right at like the top of a stitch. You can see it looks a lot more like a double crochet than a turning chain does. So with that, we are now ready to continue across the rest of the row. After we've worked on that first stitch, however you like to make that double crochet, then we are going to front loop only double crochet in the next stitch. So we need to look at the tops of our stitches. And just like any other stitch, here we've got foundation double crochet, but pretty much any crochet stitch I can think of is going to have those 2 loops at the top, right? Those nested V's when we count the tops of our stitches. So the front loop is always the loop of those 2 that's closest to us, and the back loop is always the one that's furthest away. And it's always relative to you, the crocheter. So I'm going to start by working a front loop only double crochet, which means I'm going to yarn over and go under just the front of those loops, the one that's closest to me. And then just make my double crochet exactly like I normally would. Then we back loop only double crochet in the next one. So now I'm going to go right in the middle of those 2 loops so that I catch just that one that's furthest away. And that is our repeat that we take all the way across until 1 stitch remains. So in the next stitch, we front loop only double crochet. You can see how I kind of angle my work in order to make it easier to catch just that loop. And then back loop only single crochet, or double crochet, excuse me. I tilt the work towards me to make it easier to get that loop. So just work back and forth with front loop only, then back loop only, double crochet until we get to that very last stitch, and then we'll just work a standard double crochet under both of those loops in the last stitch of row 2. Now we're ready for row 3. You can see here we've got just a little bit of nice texture happening there from row 2. So we're going to turn again and continue still with our first color here. And once again, I'm going to make that chainless starting double crochet in that first stitch. And again, you can use whatever double crochet substitute you prefer. If there's a different one you like, you should absolutely use that one. And if you like the chain 3, then you can go with that as well. Remember, it's your project and you should use whatever stitches give you the end result you prefer. So now with that first double crochet made, we skip the next stitch. So remember that first stitch is considered worked. Even if it's just a chain 3, that first stitch is done because that was our first double crochet. Then we skip the stitch after that. And then we're going to work 2 double crochets between the previous stitch and the next stitch. Because remember, we're kind of in limbo right here, right now. We've skipped this one, so this becomes our previous stitch. So now, what does that mean? We yarn over. We're going to put our hook right between that stitch and the next stitch. So you can see I've got 2 stitches here after my hook and all the rest of the stitches in front of my hook, and I'm going right between those posts. I'm not going into the top of a stitch at all. Just putting my hook right in that space. Kind of like if we were going to do a post stitch or something, but we go right on through to the back and put two double crochets right there. Then we skip the next 2 stitches and we do our repeat again. Our repeat is 2 double crochets between the previous and the next. So basically we're skipping 2 stitches and putting 2 stitches right between those 2 and the rest of the stitches. So there's 1 and 2, just a standard double crochet. We're just putting it in a different spot. Skip the next 2 stitches, go right in between for 2 double crochets, 1 and 2. And this is going to be our repeat that will take us all the way across until there are just 2 stitches left. So since I've got a little sample here, we can go ahead and finish it up on this one. You can pause and catch up on yours. Skip the next 2 stitches, go right in between the second of those and the rest. 1, 2. There are 4 stitches left. We know we're on the right track. We're going to go right in between there. 1, straighten out my yarn a little bit there. 2. And now, according to our repeat, we skip the next 2 stitches. We're at the end. So what we're going to do is we're going to work a double crochet in that very last stitch, but we're going to finish it with color B. So stop when you've got those 2 loops left on the hook, put it down, and pull up whatever color you want to use next. Alrighty, so I've got my next color all lined up and ready to go, and I found my end. I'm going to go ahead and remove this stitch marker and set it aside so I can put in the top of the next stitch here. And then I can pick up my work again, pick up my next color, and I'm going to come in about 4 to 6 inches because I don't want to accidentally pull this through and undo my work. Just drape that right over my hook and use that color to finish up that last stitch. Now, I want to let this working color A just hang out here. I don't want to cut it. I don't want to finish it off. That would mean ends to weave in. We are going to pull our colors up along the side until we need to use them again. So for now, we just want to let that hang out. And I do like to kind of hold on to these ends, as if you will, while I hold on to my work, and just stabilizes my work a little easier while I get things started. So however you need to hold on to things to keep it comfortable for you, that's great. We're going to turn here. Of course, we want to work back the other direction here. This is going to be row 4. And we're going to start again with a chainless starting double crochet. So we want to pull that loop up to the height, yarn over with the loop itself, go into that stitch, yarn over here with our new color, and finish our double crochet. And after this, I find those ends are pretty good to just hang out right there along the side. And we can go ahead and put a stitch marker right in the top of that stitch right there. Now I am going to, of course, when I'm all done, weave in this end, but this one will get pulled up and used again. So put my hook back in here. There we go. And now we're ready to continue with row 4. So we started with the chainless starting double crochet, or again, whatever double crochet substitute you prefer there in that first stitch. But then we're also going to double crochet again right into that same first stitch. There we go. Put a little bit of yarn there. And at this point, if this loop is pulling up, you can just give that a little tug, pull it back down. It'll all straighten out here as we weave in our ends and whatnot. So now we've got our chainless starting double crochet and double crochet in our first stitch, and we're ready to start the repeat for row 4. We skip the next 2 stitches. You can see, let's look at our work a little bit. See those next 2 stitches, how they were together there? Those 2 stitches were a pair. We're going to skip over those and work 2 double crochets between the previous stitch and the next stitch. So right in between that pair of double crochets there, in this space that's created in our work, that's where we want to work next. So we're going to yarn over and go right in there and make 1 double crochet and a second double crochet. Then we're going to look at our work again. See those next 2 stitches? We're going to jump over those and go right in between that pair and this pair and make another pair of double crochets. 1 and 2. And we're just going to continue to do this all the way across. We see a pair there. We want to go in between. 1 and 2. Another pair. Jump over those. 1 and 2. Now, when we come to the end here, you'll see we've got 3 stitches left. We've got a pair right there, plus that double crochet right there at the end. So what we're going to do now is skip these next 2 and work our 2 last double crochets right in the top of that last stitch. So it sort of mirrors what we did there at the beginning. We want to yarn over and go right into, oh, got a little hair on my hand there. Always happens this time of year. There we go. So we can put 1 and then 2 right in that last stitch. So now we can go ahead and take that stitch marker out and set it aside and use it for the first stitch of the next row. Now, one thing I forgot to do though, as I was finishing this row up, we are on to our color changes. So when I get to that very last stitch, I'm going to stop again with those 2 loops left on my hook. I have to pull them out. It happens to me every time too. It's time to pull up color C. Okay, so now we've got our color C ready. So now we can do the same thing. We're going to stop with those 2 loops left on our hook, yarn over with our new color here, and pull through, and just let those ends hang out there to the side. Again, I do like to put a little grip on those so that now I can turn and begin row 5. Now, row 5 is going to be a repeat of row 3. We're just doing it in a new color. So we actually go back to the instructions for row 3. So let's do that together. Okay, so let's begin row 5, which is a repeat of row 3 with color C. We're going to start again by pulling up our loop here to the height of a double crochet and making that chainless starting double crochet, or again, whatever double crochet substitute you prefer. If you prefer to just go ahead and chain 3 here, that is perfectly fine. You can see now at this point, all 3 of my yarns are going to be connected to my work. So every few rows or so, it will be important to sit down and sort of untangle those. If they've become twisted while we're making our work, we just take a moment every few rows to untwist our yarns. That will save a lot of pain as you go. So now we just want to take a moment, like I say, straighten out our yarns as we go here. Get everything nice and laid out. And now we're ready to continue across row 3. So we've got our chainless starting double crochet in the first stitch. We're going to skip the next stitch and work 2 double crochets between the previous and the next. And at this point, it's even easier to see where we're going because now we're used to working between these groups of 2, these little duos. So we've got a duo right here. We're going to go right in that space right there. At this point, we don't even really need the written pattern, except to keep track of how many rows we're working. We can just look at our work and see where we're meant to go. There's a pair. We want to go right in between those. 1 and 2. Look at our work. There's 2 stitches. So we go between those and the next pair. And you can see how it's going to create this really lovely and dynamic pattern, and how the 3 colors you pick are going to interact so interestingly and so beautifully, and it's really going to give you a different look every time. And of course, for row 3 here, we work right on across. Let me get that hair out of there. It really wants to stay. There we go. Work right on across until we get to those last 2 stitches. Got 2 stitches there at the end. For row 3, we finish with a double crochet in that very last stitch. Remember though, this is where we need to change colors again. And now we're going to need to straighten out our yarn and look at where we're at. We've gone through our 3 colors, so now it's time to go back to color A. Well, let's look and see. If we straighten it out, we can see color A is right there waiting for us. It is the color waiting for us on this side. When we work 3 colors back and forth like this, changing colors every row, the next color we need will always be hanging out waiting for us right where we need it. So now we know brown is next, so we just bring that gently right up along the side here, yarn over, and finish our stitch with the brown. Now, when you're doing this method, sort of floating or carrying the yarns along the side here, you do need to be a little careful, and this can take a little bit of practice. We don't want to pull this too tight. You can look and see what happens when I pull that really tight. Do you see how that squishes down the side of our work and it's going to pinch everything together? It's not going to lay nice and flat. We also don't want it to be super loose. Let me kind of pull it out here. If it was really loose like this, then when we go to make our border along the edge, we're going to have a whole lot of extra fabric to tuck in, and our stitches are going to loosen up along the side. So I call it the zhuzh. I don't know that there's a real name for it, but I just kind of go back and forth with the yarn and my hook like this until it feels like there's just the right amount of tension. You can see how it's just pulling right up to the height of that stitch there. Everything looks good. It's not sticking out on the side. It's not pulling down on those previous rows. And it really gives me just a nice line right there. Now, everyone is going to be a little different. Nothing has to be, perfect. And the border will hide a lot of sins. But we want to try and just have it basically lying right along the edge there so that we can turn and work our next row. And then, of course, color C will just hang out right there on the side until we need it again. So now we're back to color A, and it's our repeat for row 4. We're just repeating rows 3 and 4, changing colors every row until we get very nearly to the end. So let's go ahead and make row 4 one more time together. I've pulled up my loop to the height of a double crochet. And remember, we've got that going there too. So you want to kind of gently pull that. And then I like to just go ahead and pinch it right there so that now this part can't move. And I've got all the control right up here on my hook and the working yarn. So now I can secure that loop, yarn over, go in on the top of that stitch, yarn over again, pull up my loop. You can see I'm still pinching that yarn down there so it's not moving around on me. Yarn over, pull that loop through and behind the yarn over, then finally finish our stitch. Now I'm going to go ahead and put a stitch marker right away in the top of this stitch. And now I will come back and check. Do I like the way that brown, color A, is laying there? If it pinched down, I can pull that stitch out and redo it. If it's really loose, I can pull it out and redo it. But right now, that looks pretty darn good to me. So now we can just go ahead and continue across with what would be, in this case, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, row 6. So row 6 is going to be a row 4 repeat. So that means we can also glance down at 2 rows before to see what we did. We have 2 stitches in that first stitch, like so. And then we can look at our work. Remember, we've got a pair. We're going to always go between the pairs. And if you don't have the written instructions in front of you, you can glance down. Whatever you were doing 2 rows before the previous row, right there, you're going to be doing the same thing on this row because it's just a 2-row repeat. So having a 2-row repeat, like I say, with 3 colors in use really creates this really lovely dynamic design where everything's slightly offset, and it really creates a lot of movement and beautiful color and texture in the piece. And what we're going to do is essentially keep repeating these 2 rows in these 3 colors, whatever colors you choose, until you've worked a total of 92 rows. So that means you're going to finish on a color, let's see, it would be a color A repeat. You want row 92 to be color A, and then you can go ahead and break colors B and C at that point because those last few rows, just like our first few rows, will again just be worked in our color A. So you can see here I am finishing up my row 4 repeat, running out of yarn, and it's getting to the point where I'd have to sit down and untangle it, but you want to do that every few rows. And now you can see how we've worked that stitch pattern right across. What did I do? I finished that stitch too soon. That very last stitch, we want to stop, go back, look at what we've got here. You can see this is just an end. This one is actually attached to this side. Let me pull that over here so that it's really clear. So now that we're finishing up, orange is the color we want next. We're going to keep that color pattern. Brown, orange, yellow, A, B, C, whatever they are. Now we just bring that color up and we're going to do the same thing. Gently pull that through, give it a little zhuzh until we have it just the way we like it. And then we can repeat those 2 rows until we've worked a total of 92 rows, finishing up our last 92nd row with color A. Okay, so here I've added a couple more rows to our little sample to represent the length of our wrap. This is the same kind of row that you're going to be working as row 92. We're in color C, and it is a row 4 repeat where we've got those 2 stitches in the first stitch and 2 stitches in the last stitch. You can see right here, I've paused and I'm ready to finish that stitch with color A. So assuming this is the full 92 rows, now we are ready to go ahead and cut some yarn, make it a little easier on ourselves. We can definitely go ahead and cut color B. Again, I'm going to make sure to leave enough length to weave that end in, and I can set the rest of that aside. You shouldn't have too much more of color B left, just a little bit. And then we can go ahead and I'm going to, before I cut this end, I'm going to go ahead and finish that last stitch with the color A. Oop, let me try that again. Fell right off my hook. Finish that last stitch with color A, like so, and I'll go ahead and pull that stitch up to where I'm probably going to want it for that chainless starting double crochet. You can see it's laying really nicely along the side there. And now I'm going to go ahead and cut color C. I'm going to leave just a little extra length on that one just to make sure it doesn't accidentally pull out. So now we can set those colors aside, and it makes it a lot easier to just have the one color attached. So now we are ready to work on row 93. And row 93, very simply, is going to be a row 3 repeat. So one more repeat in our pattern, but we want to do it with color A. So just as a reminder, we're going to start with that chainless starting double crochet right in that first stitch. Skip the next stitch and work those pairs in between our other pairs. So just like the row 3s we've been doing all along, we just do one more repeat. So I'll see you as soon as we've finished this row. So here I've repeated row 3 again, and now for row 94, we are going to start with our chainless starting double crochet, and then simply double crochet in each stitch across. We're trying to create some of the same look that we had here down at the beginning, so this is a pretty simple row. Again, start with whatever double crochet substitute you like, and then simply double crochet all the way across here for row 94. So here we are, finished with row 94, and we're ready to begin row 95. Row 95 is very simply a repeat of row 2. So we start again with our double crochet substitute, whichever one you prefer. And I'm going to go ahead and mark my stitch, even though this is the last row before we do our border round. It's always nice to know exactly where I'm going to have my corner. So after we make that first stitch, then we go back to our instructions. Remember, front loop only double crochet. There we go. Followed by back loop only double crochet. And we just repeat those 2 stitches all the way across until there's 1 stitch left and double crochet in that one. So front loop only. And then back loop only. So I'll see you when we finish up row 95. And as we come to that corner, we can of course get that stitch marker out of the way. We'll be all done with that now. I'm going to work in that last stitch there of the row, and then I'm going to chain 2, because I think it gives us a really nice sharp corner when we're working this way, and turn to work down along the side of our wrap. So when we're doing this, I'm not going to work into the side of the row I'm making right now. I'm going to come down, make sure I'm working the side of this last row of double crochets here. And for me, I find the best spacing is to work 2 stitches, or 2 single crochets in this case, in the side of each row. So how you do this is up to you. Some people really like to split the stitch. I think for this pattern, that's my favorite way to do it, is to kind of go right through that stitch to put my single crochets in the side. Some people prefer to work around the stitch in its entirety. You can do either one. Again, it's mostly just a matter of taste and preference. But you want to be consistent. That's the main thing. If you decide to split the stitch, you want to do that all the way across. If you decide to work around the stitches, do that all the way across. As long as it's consistent throughout the piece, then it's a design choice, and it's totally up to you. But I find for double crochet stitches, spacing-wise, 2 stitches in the side of each row gives me a nice, really flat line. Your tension may be different. If you have to throw in an extra stitch because it's bunching up, then go ahead and do so. If you find that yours is getting too ripply, try skipping a space and only working in the 2 stitches in the side of every 2 out of every 3 rows or something like that. You'll have to play with it a little bit. The exact stitch count here really is not important. It's just a final round to make it look good. So whatever works for you and your tension level. Now you'll see here, we've come to where we've got some of these ends. I can still pull on the ends, the cut ends, if you will, to tighten those up if I want to, but we've got those floats along the side as well. So when we work around into or around these stitches, however you're choosing to do it, this one doesn't want to let me in. Let me in. There we go. We want to make sure that we catch not so much these tail ends, those will get woven in, we can catch those if we want to, But we do want to make sure that those floats are sort of trapped within those stitches like so. We don't want those hanging out at the side of our work. We want them hidden within our stitches here. So I'm going to go ahead and get that one out of the way. But as I come for a second time in the side of this orange row, again, I just want to make sure that I get that trapped right inside. Same thing as I come down here. Make sure whatever color is not in use is just getting trapped right inside those stitches. And of course, the closer your colors are to each other, the less they're likely to peek through. These colors have a lot of, contrast with each other. So you might see a little bit of a peek through, but overall, you're going to get a really nice solid line here. So you can see down along the side. And as long as we capture those floats and don't leave them hanging out, we can weave in our ends and we'll have a beautifully finished shawl. We're going to continue to do the same thing all the way around. We worked across this row, chain 2, single crochet down this side. When we get to this corner, we're going to do the same thing. We'll work 2 stitches in the side of this row, chain 2, and then work into the bottom of each one of those foundation stitches, chain 2, and then work evenly the exact same way up this side, and then we can join and block our wrap. And that's how to crochet the Rocky Road wrap. Remember, you can go to mooglyblog.com to get the free written pattern as well as right and left-handed video tutorials. Thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.